So collaboration, there's a difference between process and product. And in my opinion, I'm much more interested in the product. The process would be nice if it was fun. And so you try to make that happen, but you don't get in the way of the process. Don't try to get your ego in it. It's almost not even about the artist. It's about the song and about getting whatever the song wants to be its truest self.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Today's episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is sponsored by Roswell Pro Audio, maker of handcrafted microphones in California. Inspired design and impeccable attention to detail will help you capture a gorgeous vintage sound without the vintage price tag. Check out their beautiful line of microphones at roswellproaudio.com. Sending your music to be mastered can be scary, but sending your music to a total stranger for mastering can be really scary. Chris Graham is a Billboard chart-breaking mastering engineer with thousands of credits and knows how to make your record sound fantastic. But more importantly, he understands that there is one person that really knows what a great record sounds like, and that's you, rock stars. So if you're thinking about hiring professional mastering, but not sure if it's right for you, go to chrisgrahammastering.com and get a free sample mastering of your song. Go find out just how great your record can sound at chrisgrahammastering.com. Just click the link included in the show notes. Hey Rockstars, it's your host Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Jordan Lehning, a Nashville native who grew up in the recording studio. After a brief stint at Berklee College of Music, he returned to Nashville to record, play in bands, and cut his engineering teeth working with his father, Kyle Lehning, who has also been on the show on episode 94. In fact, we've also heard from Jordan's brother, Jason Lehning, on episode 74. The Lehnings are obviously a very musical family, and I'm honored to have all of them on the podcast. After working with the likes of Randy Travis, Ray Price, B.J. Thomas, Kenny Rogers, among others, Jordan ventured out on his own, finding success in film scoring, commercial licensing, and production. He's worked with many Nashville indie artists, including Jasmin Kaset, Caitlin Rose, Andrew Combs, who I've also worked with, Kree Harrison, and more. He's become known for his skills in composition and arranging with works including Kacey Musgraves, Shane MacAnally, Rodney Crowell, Charlie Worsham, Jacquire King, Jessie Baylin, Lucie Silvas, and others. Jordan now works out of his newly constructed full-service studio, The Duck, where we are joining you today for this podcast. Please welcome Jordan Lehning to Recording Studio Rockstars. Jordan, my friend, are you ready to rock?
I am.
Nice, dude. You look ready to rock.
I am. Just
sort of relaxed in a big comfy leather studio chair there with the mic in front of you.
Yeah, man.
So, it's pretty remarkable. Now that I've been here hanging out with you before, while we're setting this all up, I just learned that you have two other brothers too. Are they also in music?
Well, okay, so Jason's the eldest. I'm the youngest. And in between, under Jason, there's Ryan. And Ryan is a copyright lawyer for Sound Exchange up in D.C. And under him is Eric. And Eric is 3 years older than me. Eric is a really talented singer and a really, really good lyricist and a really good visual artist. So in some form or fashion, we all sort of dabble in the music industry.
Yeah, and I think you said there was about a 12-year difference between you and Jason?
Between Jason and I, there's 12 years, yeah.
So you're mid-30s, something like that?
I'm 33.
33, okay, great. Cool. Well, you've done a lot of cool stuff.
Thanks.
In your time. Just listening to your music, getting ready for the podcast, you sort of chastised me a little bit for checking out all the old stuff, but I was like, man, this stuff sounds great. So cool. I'm looking forward to hearing the new stuff. Rockstars, we're going to include links to Jordan's work in the blog post as well, so you can click through and check out the music. I've done a brief introduction. A lot of it is borrowed from your own bio. Can you tell us in your own words about how you got into all this music stuff and, what was it like to grow up in the recording studio?
It's weird because I wouldn't say that I ever got into it. I was always sort of in it because I've been in studio since I could remember. just being around my dad, and my mom's a singer. And so having her around the house singing, and then if I was at the studio, there was always music going on. There was always musicians.
Yeah, I think your dad told the story about pursuing your mom.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
The background singer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So it was just always there. It was always part of the deal. And I was early on really interested in classical music, which was different from my brothers and my parents. But, they definitely encouraged that when they saw my interest.
So we're sitting in your studio here, the Duck, and you're surrounded on one side by a Juno 60. You got a Roland XP50 over there, I guess an Akai controller, MIDI controller, and the classic DX7. Guitars and, bass hanging from the wall. And I think I saw guitars in the other one. There you go. The Eastwood. That looks like an old Mosrite, too.
Yeah, it's a Barry. It's good.
That's cool. So, did you start out with a focus on keys? Did you start out playing guitar?
I played piano first.
Okay.
And again, at like 3 or 4, I got really into Beethoven and Für Elise,
At 3 or 4?
Yeah, it was as far back as I can remember. It was like that was my first real interest. And so I'd poke out and figure out Für Elise on piano and just kind of play that over and over. Actually, on that spinet that's in...
Can you sing that one for us?
Da, 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 da,
oh, yeah. I remember that one from the video game.
Yeah.
Was it Galaga or something?
Yeah.
Galaxia.
Yeah, man. So, yeah, that was sort of my first passion. So I was doing piano, and my parents, when I was really young, put me into Blair School of Music. And the teacher I worked with was a woman named Dr. Grau. And sight reading was something that we tried to do, and it just didn't take. I'm still a really lousy sight reader. I can write pretty quick, but I have a really tough time reading.
But so you're more of a by ear.
I have good ears, and I'm curious about notate. Like then I was curious about it, like I wanted to be able to do it because I loved the way it looked. I loved the idea of that much control over something. But it just, that kind of teaching didn't really take with me. I liked her a lot and everything, and I think she saw something in me too, but sight reading was always really tough for me.
Did you take to music in a way that stood out against the rest of your siblings?
I really don't know. I don't know. Me being the youngest, when I was 4, Jason was 16. So when I was 6, Jason's going off to college. So it's hard for me to know from my vantage point how different it was for me to them,
Yeah. And remarkably, maybe, while on the one hand, it looks like your parents identified, a young prodigy in you. Maybe at the same time as the 4th kid, they were just happy to get you out of the house at that age.
Totally. Yeah, prodigy's a stretch. I think it was more like, yeah, he seems interested. Let's see if we can get a couple hours
Prodigy
away.
or problem.
That's right.
All right, cool. So I like to ask our guests who come on the show to share an inspirational quote. What do you got for us?
So it's probably my favorite quote that I think applies to any scenario. This is sort of my golden rule, and it's Frank Zappa, who said the most important thing to do in your life is to not interfere with somebody else's life.
Really nice. That sounds sort of all-encompassing outside the studio.
It is, but I think to me, it really rings true in the studio. As a producer, as anybody, just don't get in the way is really all he's saying. Just try not to get in the way.
Yeah, and he sort of reached way outside the studio too with his influence going to Washington, D.C.
Totally.
to sort of, keep the government from messing with people's musical lives.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
So first of all, you're my hero for bringing up Frank Zappa, period. And then for bringing him on as your inspirational quote. And I noticed you got a Frank Zappa poster in the bathroom. I went in there and there's Frank standing next to me.
Yep.
I was standing there. Frank was right next to me. and I was like, oh man, that's cool. And it reminded me of a couple of things. One is when I first went to Prague back in 1991, we went into the train station and there was a poster of Frank Zappa sitting in the bathroom, or like I think it was the famous poster of him on the toilet. On the John.
I Zappa Crappa.
And it was like, at the customs check-in or something like that at the train station.
That's great.
And I think it was the president of Czechoslovakia at the time was a big fan of Frank Zappa's. But great. Also it reminded me of a dream I had as a kid because I was a big fan of Zappa. And I had this anxiety dream once where in my dream, I had this opportunity to try out for his band playing guitar.
Yeah.
But there I was with a broken high E string, and I couldn't get it on fast enough and tuned up to play. So that was the whole dream.
That's amazing. I've had one about him where he was in his room and he was showing me something on piano, and it was some heady, one of his more modern classical compositions, and it was real big, wide, thick chords. It was awesome. I remember waking up going like, because I remember in the dream me thinking, shit, I wish I'd written that. That's really good. And then waking up going, shit, I wish I could remember what he was playing.
Yeah, really. Oh, that's true, man. I've written music and lyric and everything in dreams, and then woke up and unable to remember what it was.
Yeah.
I just had the sense that it was brilliant at the time.
Yeah, well, everything's brilliant when you're dreaming.
All right, so Richard Dodd, who's also been on the show recently, he had similar suggestions about this idea of getting out of the way when you're recording. And it's great advice from Zappa himself. Talk to us a little bit about what it means to you. How are some ways that you get out of the way on a recording session and let the music happen?
So collaboration, you know, there's a difference between process and product. And in my opinion, I'm much more interested in the product. The process would be nice if it was fun. And so you try to make that happen, but you don't get in the way of the process. Don't try to get your ego in it. Don't try to, you know, it's really about the song. It's almost not even about the artist. It's about the song and about getting whatever the song wants to be its truest self. And so, you know, I can see myself sometimes start to get in the way of something and then realize, oh, no, this is me doing this. You know, I always look for other people to go on. I'll try something and say, what do you think? You like it? Don't like it? If they don't like it, it's like, great, let's not do it. Let's move on. Let's just, you know, it's whatever you need to get the product in its truest form.
So you've had a lot of experience doing co-writing with people.
Yeah. And I more and more don't like co-writing.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because co-writing is a thing that I was first introduced to moving to Nashville.
Sure.
It's a thing that people do regularly. It's a thing I've had a little experience with. Sometimes it goes well. Sometimes it doesn't go well. Talk to us about the reasons why co-writing doesn't go well and what we should do about it.
Well, it's a blind date. You know, especially what I've been doing more and more is having people over, and it'll be like, yeah, let's co-write. And then when they get here, I'll just say, let's just shoot the shit and talk, and let's get to know each other. Because somebody comes in, you don't know anything about them. You don't know what's going on in their head. You don't know what they want to talk about, write about. And for me, if they have something they want to say, they should say it. You know, it's like, it's one thing to come in with a half idea. Hey, I just need some help with this chorus. It's like, okay, that's pretty doable. That's pretty easy. But to kind of sit there and look at each other for a while and go, what do you
yeah, where does it start? Doesn't it kind of start with somebody going, well, you know, you got any good ideas?
Got anything?
Yeah. And what does that even mean? Does that mean that it's bullshit and you've already started off on the wrong foot?
I know. So me and one of my best friends, Skylar Wilson, who I've done a ton of co-production work with, we did the Caitlin Rose record, The Stand-In, and it was a really good time. And at the time, Caitlin didn't have a ton of tunes, so me, her, and Skylar would get together at least once a week, sometimes a couple times a week, and we'd write. And usually we'd have a song, and usually that song would wound up on the record.
So it felt good.
It felt really good.
Like
but I will say, when it wasn't working, I'd say I would stop. I'd be like, going, let's stop, let's go get a beer. And then, you know, one time out of 10, we come up with something at the bar, you know,
nice.
And just shooting the shit.
But then you woke up from the dream and you couldn't remember what it was.
Right. But it was brilliant.
This is just an aside, but it just popped into my head, so I'll mention it. There is it looks like a pretty cool app on the iPhone called Songspace. Have you heard of that one?
I've heard, but not checked it out.
It's pretty interesting. Might be worth checking out. It's an app that will collect lyric and idea and let you record into it and keep things organized.
Oh, interesting.
And I guess share things back. And you know, I don't really know the extent of how it works, but sounds cool. What do you use for keeping track of songs? When you're sketching, songwriting with people, what's your process for organizing that stuff?
I do a lot of writing by myself. And when I'm doing that, my voice memo. I mean, there's like 2,000 memos on there of just snippets.
That sounds easy to organize, 2,000 voice memos.
Well, yeah, you know, they're all about 30 seconds. They're all about 30 to a minute, and they're all kernels that could pretty easily be turned into something. but I rarely hunt stuff down. You know, I've done co-writing, and I used to do it a lot more, and the more I do it, the less it really turns me on.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you about this, because I have a good friend that will come and we'll write together, and I'll just play the guitar and he'll just throw the words at it. And it's like we're bringing two different things to a process. Yeah. Do you find that is the ability to bring different elements to a process is sort of required in a co-writing for it to feel great? Or do you feel like people can bring equal abilities, musical and lyrical and melodic?
I mean, first, it depends on what you're doing. If you want to write for country, it's about finding that guy that can do that with country. If you just want to make, you know, I've considered it like standard music, where it's like just a great song. It could fit in any genre. That's a specific thing in its own. I don't know. You know, I just think it depends. So with your guy, is it consistently good, or do you fish and sometimes
it's almost consistently fun? Sometimes, you know, he might not be feeling it, but I'll go listen later. I'm like, man, there's some great nuggets of ideas in there. You know?
Yeah. I would say that I haven't found somebody that consistently turns me on.
And we're not writing hit songs either. Nobody's covering our songs. It's for ourselves.
Yeah. You know? My brother Eric and I have written a ton of stuff together, and I would say that when we do that thing, it's consistent and it's really fun. Outside of, you know, I've written with Scott. There's a bunch of people that I've written with that are like, yeah, that's really fun, and I would do that again in a heartbeat.
Yeah. But
I am really cautious about going to new people. I'll do it, of course, but I'm surprised if it goes well.
All right, let's back up and talk about you writing by yourself for a sec. I like the topic of writing, so I didn't know we were going here, but we are.
It's all good.
When you record bits and pieces and you got these nuggets, what's the next stage for you? Do you revisit your memos on your iPhone and then think, oh, these sound pretty good, I'm going to sit down and choose one to kind of work on today?
So typically I'll have a record idea. I'll have a vibe for a record that I want to do. Right now, for instance, I have about 5 record ideas. One of them is 3 albums. One of them is like a trilogy. There's another one that's a horn-based record called Worm that
nice.
Is really weird, and it's mostly I'll come up with ideas on a voice memo, and I'll do it as kind of like, if I have a little idea, I'll sit down the voice memo and I'll just sort of improv and
that's all you need, right? Fast as possible.
Fast as possible, get it out. And then, like for that record, I have probably 10 to 12 ideas. I'll go into Sibelius and just start composing the stuff and start arranging. And lyrics are typically last, unless it is first. You know, if lyric isn't first, it's absolutely going to be last.
Yeah.
So it's just different with the different projects. There's another record, my stepdad, Dave Mead Sr., who's David Mead's dad.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Has a cabin in Alabama.
I have David Mead's old coffee table in my living room.
Do you really?
Yeah.
That's awesome. He has a cabin in Alabama. So I'll go down there, and it's on the lake, it's middle of nowhere, it's awesome. I'll go down there and work for a while. And I brought that 8-track Tascam down there and brought about 10 little voice memo ideas that I had down, and I fleshed them out in tunes and made a record. The intent was just to do proper demos, but I think I wound up with, this is just its own thing. So typically the voice memos become albums, but I'm not thinking about it when I'm doing it. I sort of, if I later go, oh, I'd like to make a record that kind of does this thing, I'll go through my voice memos and try to find music that does that.
Well, I did a record that people listening to this podcast have heard. Rockstars, you've heard Skadoosh, my theme music for the podcast. And in making that, I sat down with Corey, who's a drummer, friend, and I was playing electric guitar. And then my buddy Roger Alan Nichols, who you might know as well, who's been on the show as well. He came over at one point, and he just sat there, and he was just like, all right, play an idea. And he play it, and then stop, play another one. Okay, stop, And so we sort of like collected 12 ideas before lunch, went to lunch, and then Corey and I could come back later, and we just took each nugget of an idea and then sat down and just kind of worked it out until
That's
we
awesome.
had some short arrangement of a tune. And I found that to be a really productive way to do it.
And sort of thrilling too, because it happens so fast.
Yeah. Keep yourself on the edge of your seat.
Absolutely. Have fun,
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, so let's keep jumping forward here. So you've done a lot of great work. I've heard, like commercial jingle kind of compositions from you. I've heard pop music. I know you've worked with your dad. you clearly know your way around writing music, even though you say you don't know how to read it because you're arranging for strings and horns. But not everything always goes smoothly. Share a story about an important failure for you in the studio or with your career.
So this is like at school. So I was at Berkeley. I had just kind of gotten going. This might have been my second semester. And I was doing a score for a movie that my friends had made. And it was a short movie. And they sort of last minute requested a completion of the score. And I scrambled and I went to a couple people that I knew that knew some of the heads of the departments. And I said, how hard do you think it would be for me to get us like a chamber ensemble? And the only thing at this time that I had written for was strings. I had done a string quartet when I was like from 16 to 18. I was working on a string quartet.
Nice.
So I was now at Berkeley. I mean, if you close your eyes and you throw a rock, you're going to hit a trombone player. So it's like you can find any instrument you want to find. And I went to some of the heads and said, hey, I'm doing this score and I'm trying to get some studio time. Do you think you guys can hook me up with some studio time and I can find some players? And they accommodated immediately. It was awesome. It was amazing. And so then it was like, okay, now I got to go write this stuff. And the session was supposed to be like that night. And I hadn't written anything. So I ran home. I started in, I was using Finale at the time. I started in Finale. And I'm learning how to use it at the moment. I'm skipping all my classes to get.
And do you have a musical idea in your head already, though?
I want to say yeah, but it's like translating that to paper is his own task. So I went for it, and then my interface with the program was slowing me down, so I switched to handwriting, and that I can do pretty fast. So I just started scribbling stuff down, and I'm going as fast as I can, and then I do some copying in Finale, then I send it over to the printer, and I get all this stuff done, and I'm running into the session, and I get there, and all the players are there. I'm trying to remember what we had. I think we had like 2 or 3 trombones, 2 trumpets, a euphonium, no tuba, 3 cellos, maybe some violins. We had a bunch of shit, and I had all this shit written out, laid it on there, and they had me up there conducting. You know who Elliott Shiner is?
Yes.
So Elliott's son, Matt Shiner, is an old buddy of mine from Berkeley. And he was in the control room. He probably remembers this, but he was in the control room watching me and kind of laughing at me the whole time, too. He's just this big shit-eating grin on his face the whole time. And there's a little, a conductor's podium I'm at. And I'm, to this day, a really shitty conductor. And I get up there, and I'm pitting out in my shirt, I'm like, okay. And the first cue is about this fast. It's like 240, it's like ridiculously fast. And I like count it off and it's just like, it just doesn't make any sense right out of the gate.
Sounds like Frank Zappa already.
Well, it was like Frank Bad Zappa.
Jazz from Hell.
Yeah, right. But not even that good. And then somebody says, why don't you count it in 2? And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. And the whole thing was a complete failure. It wasted everybody's time. And beyond that, the hard drive that this guy gave me to transfer it over, like everything was corrupted at the end of the. So it was like this complete, nothing worked. And nothing was salvaged. I don't have any. There's no record of it anywhere. Everybody's, and we were.
You can't even build a sample library out of it now.
No, and you know what I did get from it though? The guy gave me the Berkeley Hollywood sound effects sample library at that same session, which nice. I've used many times. It's great stuff.
There's always a takeaway.
Hey, and that was it. And also, I was talking to my mom about it after, and she was like, "Well, now you've learned your lesson." And I was like, "I guess, but I think I'd do it again."
Yeah, but what's the lesson?
Well, I would have done it again. If I had that opportunity again, I would absolutely try. And if I fail, I fail. But it's like, might as well give it a shot, But
is the lesson, about preparation and just about, not trying to bite off too much to chew at once?
I guess that's right. But I still haven't learned that because I definitely do that. Still.
I'm constantly doing that every week with the podcast right now.
Yeah. I have this belief that there's actually 26 hours in a day.
How many of those do you get to save for your family time?
My head checks out. My ears stop listening after I can go past 12 hours of work, but not much past. I can't go past 15 hours of work.
Yeah.
But, my kids are always coming in and hanging out, and I'll stop and go see them. Just, if I was an hour away from home, it would be pretty tough. But, but because they're here, it's no big deal.
And a lot of times you're working by yourself, sort of doing compositions and working on some, so you can kind of step away from it when you want to.
And even if I'm working with other clients, kids can come in. People know the drill. It's all good.
Yeah. So Rockstars, Jordan has already warned us that kids may walk in the middle of the podcast.
Yeah. Any moment.
We're just going to leave it in there.
Yeah.
We might clean up our language for just a moment. All right, cool. So now how about sort of an aha moment for you? Anything where things sort of clicked?
The first time I used a really great string section, it sounded tripled. And it was, I'd used a lot of people who were great and were young, really young at the time. And the first time I was able to work with a really great ensemble, it was like, oh.
It just had that sound, that big,
it was
thick
just
sound.
Like perfect. It was just perfect, and then I was younger and growing up. Everybody doing the same thing I was doing seemed to be much older than me. So I sort of had this root for the underdog feeling that later on it was like, oh, professionals are called professionals for a reason. And, that was a big moment.
I feel like we get to experience that with session musicians here in Nashville
Constantly.
too, whether it's a drummer, a bass player, a guitar player, or a background singer who comes in and just nails it. And you're like, how did you do that?
I sang backgrounds this morning with over at Jacquire's, and it was like, it was good. It worked. But I've been in situations before where it was just like, man, I am not the guy for this.
Let's jump to that for a sec. Talk a little bit about working with Jacquire King.
Jacquire's awesome. He is one of the most, I don't want to say intense, but I think that's the word, listeners that I've worked with, where you can just tell the magnifying glass is wide open, and he's really, really listening, and he does not settle, which is great.
Keeps pushing towards the right thing.
He pushes towards the right thing, and it's work, but it works. It's why he makes great records.
What are some examples that you feel like you've seen of pushing for the right thing and ultimately saying, this isn't cutting it, let's just bail? Have you seen that at all?
I feel like I've done that, where we try, and you can sort of just tell this is not going to work.
That's a hard thing to do sometimes, especially if you feel like you've invested time, energy, or money into something. Sometimes it can be hard to just let go of it and go, this isn't it, cutting it, let's bail.
The time you can't get back, everything else you can.
You can sell a bad track.
No, but you can find some more money and do it again. But you're not going to get, Wednesday the whatever back.
Where are some places in the studio where you're not going to be able to push it? A vocalist, for example. Do you have any thoughts on trying to push for the right thing and recognizing that it's not going to happen right this second?
It depends on the singer, because this is an instance where I'd say Zappa's quote applies here, where it's like, just don't interfere. If you get a singer who just sings crazy, they're just all over the place. And one thing that I'll do is work with a singer and I'll give them some direction. And if they take direction well, then it's like, great, we'll figure this out. If they just don't take direction, and if they want to take direction, they just don't know how, then you don't say like, well, this isn't cutting it. You say, well, just give me 5 passes and I'll see what I can do.
Yeah.
But you don't ever make them feel like they're singing shit,
Sometimes your giving direction is getting in the way, right? Sometimes it's better to just say, just give me another. Or do you feel like that can mess things up?
That can become a rabbit hole. But I mean, one can quickly tell whether or not the singer has an objective sense of self, where they're singing and that they're able to hear themselves sing instead of just like feel themselves sing. You know what I mean? Like where you say, fall off here on this note, or breathe here, or attack this a little harder.
Breathe here is a tough one. Sometimes you can sort out where the breathing needs to happen to be able to sing this part right, but some singers are just stuck on a phrasing, and that's just the way they're going to do it.
Well, but then they're like with Jasmin Kaset. I'm really close with her. Her and I are really old pals, so it's okay. I'm really comfortable about being like, we can beat this. Come out here, let's work on this for a second. And if it's something that's detrimental to the song, where you really need them to breathe at a certain point, then it's like, okay, take 5, come out here, hang out, let's work on this. And then you just work on it on that one spot until you get it, until it becomes muscle memory for the person.
Yeah. And so an example of why you might need to help a singer know where to breathe is because of the fact that they're not breathing in the right place. This one particular long note at the end of the line just keeps wiping out before they get to the end of the note, right? Or
Sure.
they can't hold their pitch.
Or their pitch is wobbly at the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or their pocket gets all backwards. If they're breathing in a random spot, like the downbeat of a word sounds like the upbeat. It just can get really screwed up.
Right. There's some singers can do some remarkably weird things with phrasing words when it becomes a lyric.
Yeah. Frank Black
put the emphasis on the wrong syllables.
Right. Frank Black does that a lot in Teenager of the Year, but I think it's on purpose. It's like almost Joycean or something.
So Jordan, you've kind of gone from being at Berklee College of Music and then came back to Nashville, started working with your dad in the studio. I guess you had grown up in the studio anyway, but do you have any insights you want to share about the difference between a school setting like Berklee and being in a real world recording studio back here in Nashville making records professionally?
It's just boots on the ground. I think that's initially why I left Berklee, was because it felt like practice is not real in the music industry. It's like you're either doing it or you're not doing it. That being said, I studied film scoring at Berklee, and I studied arranging, and I never aspired to be an engineer. It just sort of was a byproduct of getting product.
Yeah. Turns out you had to hit record to capture your string idea.
You got to hit record, yeah. And everything matters. Every single thing matters. And no thing matters less than the other thing. So your compressor, your pre, your mic, your pop filter, your mic stand, everything is as important as the next thing, specifically the song. So, when I got to just, again, that's why I left. That's what it was like, okay, I might as well just start doing this if this is what I'm going to do, because nobody really cares if you have a degree, That being said, I think college is good for doctors and lawyers. I don't want a doctor dropout,
Well, I went to Middle Tennessee State University to study recording.
I went there initially too before I went to Berklee.
Yeah, and the thing that I remember taking away that I thought was really valuable was all the tech study. It was learning the electronics and learning some of the theory behind stuff. And it definitely, I think also at that time, coming into a studio in the early 90s, actually understanding something about SMPTE and time sync and MIDI and stuff really did prove to be helpful when I was in the studio at times, and knowing something about wiring and building cables from my internship as well.
That's totally invaluable. And that just wasn't what I was there for. For me, one of my first classes was just a traditional harmony class, and our textbook was Bach. Was like the Well-Tempered Clavier, and I was
you're like, I read this when I was 3.
Well, no, but it was like, I can, this is at the bookstore. I can look at this whenever. I can study this whenever. And why are we doing this? And then, later I was studying scores that weren't being taught in our class, and I was learning a lot. And it was just like, this is silly. And if I have a question, I can go ask somebody.
Yeah. Well, an interesting take on that too is when I came down here to do that and go to school, I didn't know anything about the recording business. I hardly knew anything about recording. I didn't really, I certainly didn't grow up with experience in and around a studio to sort of see what that looked like. So I think it was really helpful for me. I did grow up around music though, and I, probably had an understanding of music that I brought with me.
Yeah.
Let's jump to another question. What goes into a great song?
Are we talking composition or recording?
Composition.
I don't like being bored. So if you can entertain me, then you've made a great song. And I'm like, I don't care about other people's opinions either. If they go, well, I've had guys where I was going to go make a record on somebody and they play me a song and I'll go, and they'll go, well, other people really like this song. And I'll go, that's okay. They can like it. I don't like it. That's all right. So I feel like I'm a good barometer for me anyway. It's totally selfish, and just like if somebody comes to me and says, I want you to make a record on me, then I'm going to be really honest about the songs.
Yeah, totally. Well, all you can really do is follow your instinct, right? In creating in being creative. So it's like, if you're not feeling it, then there's no instinct,
Then
and there's
don't
nothing
do it.
for you to offer, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, and I've said that before too. Like I've said that in the middle of making a record where we're trying to cut a song and I just really don't have an emotional connection to it. And instead of saying, I hate this song, I'll say, you know what? I think I'd be doing a disservice to you if I recorded this song. I just don't think I'm the right guy for it.
Interesting. Well, it certainly takes a level of confidence and self-awareness to even be able to say that in the studio, I think.
Sure.
So congrats on that.
Thanks.
Now, how about the recording side of a great song?
Well, it depends. It depends on the song. It depends on if you want, I like lo-fi recordings if it's appropriate to the song. I really, 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 really like hi-fi recording. I love hearing a really great recording. And some of those can be as old as, the mid 40s, and you'll get just a really great sounding track. It just depends on the tune. It's just whatever serves the song, and if it's a great sounding thing and it works for the song, great. Like you take Daniel Johnston stuff,
Oh, you mean Daniel Johnston, who used to you'd get his cassettes mailed to you?
Yeah.
Nice. We used to cover, what was the song we did? Joy Without Pleasure.
I don't know that one.
It's a great one.
He's amazing. But like his stuff sounds crazy hi-fi. It doesn't sound good hi-fi. It's not appropriate. It's like supposed to be lo-fi, so
yeah.
It's whatever suits the song.
So rock stars, if you don't know Daniel Johnston, this is going back to the late 80s and the 90s, and you could get on the mailing list and he would, I think he would mail you a cassette, right? Or maybe somebody else.
And I'm
did.
pretty sure in the beginning, not only would he mail you a cassette of his record, but he would re-record it because he couldn't figure out how to duplicate tapes. So he'd just play the record again. He'd just record it again.
That's brilliant. And another cool thing that he did, which sort of probably stems from, hip hop culture in a way, was he would just take a musical track, play it on the stereo, and then sing a song over it. Mm-hmm. Just write something right there.
Yeah.
So I like that kind of creative spirit towards it. Now, do you think that the recording of a song can miss the mark and make a song less than great because of the way it's recorded?
Oh, and I think that happens 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
I think it's really difficult. When somebody's sitting down and writing a song, the writers are likely, probably not the ones that are going to produce the song. So the producer gets it and tries to have the same emotional connection to it that the writers had. That's got to be rare. I mean, that just doesn't happen a lot, So I think if it works, it's really lucky. You're really lucky. I think most of the time it probably doesn't work.
So I've got a project coming up starting soon where the artist has created some, delivered to me demos of the songs. And there are clear things in there that sound unfinished, incomplete about it. But there are also things in there that just sound clearly like great sonic ideas and elements and instruments that kind of don't really exist in the real world.
Yeah.
So what do you experience when something begins like that and you're supposed to take it into the studio and produce it? What are some ways that you like to carry over what works great from a demo into the actual record itself?
I mean, if something is really working in the demo land, just try to do it as close as possible. Coming down to using the same musicians, same guitars. I find more often than not that when I'm producing something or building a track, I'll just sit and I'll listen and I wait to hear stuff. You can sort of hear gaps in a song, and instead of going, boy, I need to, that is sometimes like, boy, I need to fill this gap. But typically I can hear a B3, because there's something going on.
It's because you grew up with your dad playing it all the time.
Maybe that's right. But I feel like there's something in the harmonic structure of the song that infers, that sort of directs you over to a B3 or to background vocals or to a guitar riff. I was doing this thing last night. I was working on something and I could swear there was a little church organ in a bridge, and I sort of soloed through each thing and there wasn't one. And it was like, well, then there ought to be one there.
Right.
So right. If in a demo you're hearing something that's like, to me, those kinds of things in demos are like quarter realized ideas. They're not even half realized. They're just a little glimpse of something, but you want to take that.
They're suggestive.
They're suggestive. You want to take that notion and bring it to light.
How often do you hear the demo and you think we're going to record this in the studio, but we're importing this in and we're starting with that tempo and that click track?
I've never done that.
Never done that. Okay, great. So you might be more inclined to put a band in. How often is there a click track?
It depends on the project. Me and Skylar just did a record with Josh Headley at Battle Tapes, which was great. And there was not, there might have been a click on one, but pretty sure there wasn't a click on any of the other ones. And it wasn't that kind of thing.
Right.
The Kree Harrison record, we didn't use any clicks, but pretty much any other time, I prefer using a click because it just makes everything so much easier. And I mean, you can tempo map stuff, you can do whatever you want with it, but to be grounded in grid.
And a reference.
Yeah, to
or
know.
A benchmark somehow.
Yeah, and like when I'm arranging, bar numbers is the only way I can communicate to the ensemble. They don't do like, let's start halfway through verse 2. I mean, you can, but it's like way easier to go, here's 57, we're going to punch it, 61 or whatever.
Yeah, interesting, yeah. You certainly know how to create with sort of otherworldly keyboard sounds. Do you hear those ahead of time, or do you find that otherworldly things that come from the computer and from keyboards require more of an open-ended experimentation phase that allows you to discover them?
I would say that I have a glimmer of an idea of what I want, and I'll go and dive in and try to find it. I don't do a ton of just messing around, just finding stuff. I wish I did. I wish I had time to just sort of dick around and find stuff, but I don't do a ton of that.
So you might hear the melody and you might know that it's meant to sound with a lot of reverb on it, or, it's mysterious sounding, and then just start,
right,
searching for sounds that do that.
Right. And, like last night I was working on this thing and there was a vocal melody, and in my head I was going, there needs to be some sort of bell sound that goes unison with this melody at this section. It's not vibes. I knew it wasn't vibes. It's not like orchestra bells because that's too tinky. I'm not sure it's the Juno. And eventually I landed on the Mini V, the Arturia Mini V.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Whirly sound, which is totally cool. Those things are awesome, man. And the presets on that Mini V are amazing.
Now I noticed you got the Roland XP50 behind you and it's missing the E key. What does that note sound like?
Sounds great, man.
Sounds awesome because it's still in your head.
That's right.
All right, so let's talk about strings for a second. You've done a lot of string arranging. What are some of the typical things or mistakes that a beginner is likely to make when trying to understand how to add strings to a record?
How to arrange or add to?
Let's say you're the string player or the arranger. Let's say the beginner doesn't know how to write, but they just think it needs strings. What are some typical ways that people kind of ask for the wrong thing or screw up adding strings?
Well, it just goes to the arranger. I mean, if I could hear strings on every single song, it'd be hard for you to show me a song that I would be like, I don't hear any strings. That has happened where it's like I'm having a hard time hearing stuff, but I can come up with something if you want me to come up with something, but something to better the track. I mean, Skylar said something forever ago. He said, strings don't make your track important, which I always really liked. So, as a young person, I'm trying to figure out again what you're asking.
Well, I think these are good answers. I mean, it's just the question of what are some typical struggles with strings. I'm thinking of one that I run into sometimes where I think the song would be great with strings, and then we build some sort of bed around it in the chorus or somewhere else. And by the time you kind of turn them down, they just are lost. And then you're like, I don't really hear the strings, but if I turn them up too much, it's burying everything.
I think it's all about the part. It's all about the part. Usually, if I hear something, I like really out music. I like really modern stuff. So, and strings are really attractive to me because you can manipulate them so much. There's like an endless amount of sounds you can make with strings.
Yeah.
So in that, it's like this endless amount of things you could potentially do to a track. Traditional string writing for like country and stuff, it's pretty straight ahead. You just fill in little gaps here and there.
Right. You sort of hear the melodies winding between the spaces.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then you've got stuff like Elliott Smith XO with those crazy diving strings,
which
and
are brilliant.
Stuff like that just are brilliant for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump from strings here to a sec to drums.
Yeah.
Listening to your recordings, I heard stuff that was mysterious and otherworldly and all about keyboards and soundscapes. And then I heard a lot of stuff that is just smart pop arrangement that really pops. Talk about recording drums. Talk about the difference between, do you sometimes use live drums and do you sometimes require synth or program drums to get a certain sound for pop tracks?
Well, it depends. But if I'm using electronic drums, it's probably because I don't have enough time to really focus on the engineering recording process to be able to get that, and I don't have a drummer. But if it were a perfect world, I'd have a day just to get sounds and a drummer that was willing to hang out and help me and had an arsenal of gear and, kicks and bass drums and whatever we wanted to be able to achieve the thing.
So you might actually take the time to look for that particular sound that fits the song.
If I had the time, I absolutely would.
Yeah. There's another thing that I heard on some of the pop recordings you've done that is like a clear understanding of the drums being sort of bright enough and forward enough and not competing with the space in the background. I don't know if I'm explaining it well, but it made me wonder, are these program drums or are these live drums? Is it challenging sometimes to record live drums where they're really focused and precise and, have just the right amount of brightness to an attack to each drum hit?
I usually know what kind of sound I'm going for before I go into it. So, one thing I'll have drummers not do is play a lot of cymbals and play a lot of hat. Because unless it's just part of the thing, it like dark, 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 and then make the snare just pop. Mm-hmm. It's like one thing I always try to do is make it sound like one of those old school sound effects of somebody getting punched, like in an Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, right.
If you that sound is amazing.
Yeah. And that's more challenging to do if cymbals are
blaring,
creeping into everywhere.
You're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'll just have them lay off and then overdub cymbals later. You get a lot of control that way. And you don't need a ton of mics to do that,
And is that simply because there's more room to excite the drums if the cymbals aren't in there? It's like you're sort of enhancing the high end of
totally
high frequency of the drum tones.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can make it work to where you're pushing all that top on the snare. That the top is really the snare bottom, where it's like kind of mid-high is as far as I'll push the snare top. And then I'll get the really high shit from the snare bottom.
Nice. All right. Well, let's see. Anything else you want to share about drums? Do you sometimes use drum machines too?
I do, but if I'm doing it, it's like I really want it to sound like a drum machine.
Yeah, exactly. You're not trying to fake the sound of real drums with the drum machine.
No.
And then when you're mixing, how often do you find it useful to use drum triggers, like slate trigger, for example, something like that?
I pretty quickly can tell if what I have is not cutting it. And I'm not afraid to get from point A to point B. Whatever it takes to get the product, I don't care. Yeah. I'm totally okay with that.
Do you feel like you can quickly tell if it's not cutting it all the way back in the recording process? Or do you feel like there are some things that you just won't really know until you get to the end of the mix?
I think you won't really know. And it's usually at the beginning, about a quarter of the way through the mix, I'll know that I need some help.
Yeah, I've run into that. It's frustrating too. It's pretty wonderful now that there are tools like Slate Trigger where you can
It's amazing.
Put it on there and it's like, man, I can't believe this actually works,
Yeah, it's amazing.
I've spent countless hours hand placing samples of drums, to try and make them sound actually locked to the live drum kit, only to decide you didn't like them anyway.
Sure. But you sleep better at night knowing you tried.
Exactly. Well, no, I don't think I slept. I think I was still in the studio. All right. So now how about, you come from a family, generations of recording, your dad, Jason, your older brother, yourself. What are some of the favorite tools that you like to use now that might be different from stuff that, particularly that your dad uses or used? How would you say, and this might be a real general and obvious answer to this, but how would you say that the stuff that you surround yourself with in the studio is different now than from what, your dad's generation would be surrounding themselves with?
I think the biggest difference is track count. That's really the biggest difference. Everything else about it, I'm pretty envious of what he was limited to. Obviously editing is incredible. The ease of editing now is amazing. But there really is a sense of magic in the tape world, that just doesn't happen anymore. It doesn't have to happen anymore.
Yeah.
The musicianship back then and today, musicians are great. They're still amazing. But there's this sort of like, don't fuck this up mentality that wasn't unusual then. That was just part of the deal. And the tangibility of tape in the machine, and you're punching buttons and it's like, you got to wait for it to rewind. I mean,
right. You're actually taking a moment to think.
Yeah. And now it's just so quick, and you do something, you go, can we fix that? Yep, that's fixable. All right, next. It's just such a factory. That being said, I do that. It's like I could go tape, but I'm not going to.
I remember my mom used to complain to me when we got a push button telephone. Mm-hmm. She said that she didn't like it because she lost that time that she used to have to think about what she was going to say on the phone call by dialing the numbers.
The rotary. That's amazing.
So that's not apparently not a new struggle,
Yeah.
It's been around and will continue to be around, whatever it is. One day our phones will finally work fast enough for us, and then we'll complain that they work too fast,
Absolutely.
All right. So how about this, man? Where do you see the music and the record business heading? And what are some of the new opportunities that you're excited about now?
First question, I have no clue. I have no idea. I don't even want to predict. The second question, this is a new studio for me, and I'm finding a lot of things have changed about flexibility. Budget is now probably the biggest. I didn't foresee that being such a big difference, but a budget for a record is now way more doable with having this studio and being able to experiment and have a live room at your fingertips at any time. And again, me being an arranger and liking orchestral stuff and digging chamber music, being able to just hire 5 guys, come play this thing I've written. And, that's being able to do that is really, really exciting. And having other people be able to come in and do the same thing.
Why don't you take a moment and describe the space here, your studio for Rockstars?
I am so spatially inept, but so in the control room.
We're standing in the control room now.
What is this about? I mean, it's a tight little room.
12. It's actually kind of almost cubish or something,
Well, it's rectangular. It goes longer that way.
Okay, all right.
So the live room has pretty tall vaulted ceilings. I think about 16 feet at its highest in the live room.
And even in this room, I think the ceiling is maybe 10 feet above my head.
It's 10, that's right, yeah. So it's pretty high ceilings. And in the live room, off the live room, there's 3 booths. There's a piano booth, a middle booth where I usually cut vocals, and then the third booth, which is sort of abandoned as a closet for now. And then above the control room, there's a loft that you can access via a ladder in the live room. And I've just got PS2 and N64 up there for gaming out and nerding.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, it's cool. It definitely is a nice big open space in there, and it's bright and it feels good. And you're in the control room too. Mm-hmm. And I notice, I know it may be sort of a relatively new studio for you, so you may still have places to go, but you didn't sort of over worry about treatment everywhere.
I didn't even a little bit worry about it.
Yeah, talk about that.
Well, Gary Hedden is actually coming by tomorrow morning to deal with this.
So everything we say should be deleted.
Everything should be deleted. Yeah. Thank you. My thing is, I needed a space. The idea of building this building was our little house. We have 2 kids and 1 on the way, and it was just getting really crowded. The house was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And my wife, Lila, encouraged me to build something in the backyard. And initially, it was just going to be a little box where I'd just go and do editing and mixing and stuff. And it grew into a tracking room. So as the price tag of the tracking room went up, the more and more stuff I wanted, it was like treating it it was just like, I'm just going to get this thing built and then I'll figure it out. And what works is great. What doesn't work, that's fine. We'll figure out how to fix it. So That's where we are. And, I've been in here for 3 or 4 months, and we're sort of at that place where I'm ready to get somebody to come by and take a look at it and see what they can do.
Yeah, the realities of budget when you're building your studio,
it's exponential.
They quickly come to the foreground.
Yeah, which is good. It's a constraint. It's like, hey, you can do this, but you can do this.
Yeah, there were a lot of things. I think I had 1, 2, definitely 2 closets upstairs that were meant to be amp booths. And they just ended up being converted into, closets for holding mic stands.
Right.
Don't even worry about ever completing that.
Sure.
And they're probably more useful that way. A couple more questions, and then we will take a break and hit the jam session. What are one of the things that you like most about recording pop music?
The high fidelity. That's kind of it. I love really trying to achieve like radio. I think I'm like one of those random guys that I really, really like the fidelity of music you hear on the radio. I think it's really impressive.
You mean literally like a radio broadcast into your car, or sort of Spotify onto your phone?
Well, whatever. Anything like that. Yeah. Whatever's coming out now, I think sounds really, really good. And so pop, it's an opportunity to try to do that, try to raise that bar. I think that's really exciting.
Sometimes I feel like there are these limitations in what your phone can stream to your car stereo and everything that make it even more intriguing to try and make your music sound fantastic within those limitations.
Totally.
Like I'm sort of glad that we don't all have studio monitors in our cars.
Yeah. I mean, because isn't the iPhone just mono at the end of the day? Isn't it all coming out one little speaker, or is it stereo?
If it's the iPhone speaker, I think it is.
It's just mono. So no matter what, I mean, you split it off into I have the Bose noise cancellation headphones, and they're great. And it only sounds like it. When you put those on, it's like that's the only time this record sounds like this is when you're wearing those cans.
Right.
But you try to make it sound great anywhere, and your phone is a really good first stop. One
of the things about your SoundCloud, which you again told me was old music.
I don't even know what's on there.
Well, you had a bunch of stuff that sounds like commercial jingles.
Yeah.
And jingle is almost the wrong word because that sounds jingle jangle ding ding
sure.
ding ding. Like you're selling soap or something. But and actually, I think one was labeled Pantene.
Yeah.
But it was like you had all these things that were creating soundscapes, and some of them were instrumental tracks. And I felt like I recognized you had an ability to create a track that was intentionally meant to be mysterious and murky, but another track that is pop and it's bright and in your face and everything cuts through and nothing really gets in the way of anything else. Do you have any insights you'd like to share about how you can sonically live in both worlds? Can you have pop stuff that is in your face, but it also has keyboard sounds that are murky and have depth and distance all at the same time?
Well, I mean, so I'm going to go a little far back here. What I grew up listening to is like Thomas Dolby, Screaming Jay Hawkins, Zappa.
Do you know that Thomas Dolby is teaching now in Baltimore?
Get out of here, really?
Yeah. I forgot maybe it's Johns Hopkins or something.
Whoa,
like that.
I didn't know
I heard
that.
him on a podcast recently.
That's amazing. Dolby, Screamin' Jay, Frank Zappa, the Pixies, Shostakovich, Tom Waits, Bowie. So what I listened to is really eclectic. And if you just take Dolby, and like Purple Rain is a huge influence of mine. If you take those kinds of records and then Tom Waits on the other side, and then you study why those things sound the way they do. You can apply those things to anything. If it's like, okay, let's do a murky track, but is it organic instruments? Or let's do a murky track, is it synthetic instruments? You just ask it what it wants. Do you want to be synthetic or organic? That's typically the first.
And I would say that sometimes you just don't know till you try them together and see what they sound like.
Yeah, that's right too. I mean, you just don't know sometimes.
All right, dig it. Well, let's take a break here and we'll come back in for the jam session. Rockstars, before we go, I want to remind you that you can find show notes to everything we're talking about, or links to everything we're talking about in the show notes. Just go to rsrockstars.com and you can search for Jordan there. And we'll see you guys in a moment for the jam session. Roswell Pro Audio brings you microphone design that is out of this world. Endorsed by a growing list of artists and producers like Phil Collen of Def Leppard, Ross Hogarth, who's recorded Van Halen, Ziggy Marley and the Doobie Brothers, and Super Dupes, working with Drake, Mary J. Blige, and Eminem. These are all rock stars that have discovered just how great Roswell microphones sound. Check out the Mini K47, which uses a capsule modeled on the one in the vintage U47 at a street price of only $299. or the beautiful Delphos condenser microphone with a capsule tuned like the vintage U67 with great clarity and far lower noise at a street price of only $8.99. In fact, you are hearing my voice right now on the beautiful Delphos microphone. These mics are carefully crafted by hand and immediately feel good even before you plug them in and hear how great they sound. These are well-built microphones that will last you and your studio a lifetime of great recording. Check out more audio examples of these awesome mics at roswellproaudio.com. Are you having trouble getting your mixes to sound professional? Are you mixing and mastering yourself? Did you know that the vast majority of the world's best mix engineers almost never master their own mixes? So if you're thinking about hiring a professional mastering engineer, check out Chris Graham Mastering. Chris is a Billboard chart-breaking mastering engineer who has mastered thousands of songs for both professional and home studio clients just like you. Send one of your songs to Chris and he'll master a sample of your song for free. If you decide to hire him, you can also get a free video mix consultation before mastering to help you get the most out of your mix. To learn more, check out chrisgrahammastering.com or just click the link in the show notes. Hey, Rockstars, we're back now. We're going to jump into the jam session, and my guest today is Jordan Lehning. Jordan, are you ready to jam?
I am.
So when you started out in recording, what was one of the things that was holding you back?
My professional recording business. Money. Money, because money, can mean time and players. And if you've got to go, I was working at Nashville, slinging hash when I was working. That was pretty much it, was just being able to afford to go back to the studio and still eat,
Nashville, I used to go have breakfast there every once in a while.
Yeah. Probably
I think I like the egg white omelet there.
That's right. That's a good omelet.
Yeah. So how did you get past that obstacle?
There was a moment when I quit and I was just broke for a long time. And, I had been, I would work at night at my dad's studio. When he'd leave, I'd go in there and start messing around with stuff. And I was making records. I had a band. I was doing stuff, starting to cut my teeth. And Jason and my dad would hire me very intermittently to do certain things. And it was one of those moments where it's like, okay, I can just starve and get these gigs and try to get better and better at this, or I could go back to waiting tables and have to turn down the work I really want to do. So I preferred the former, and I just, decided to starve. I was really thin.
We didn't starve too much. You were really thin. You were thinner then than you are.
Oh, yeah. I was really thin.
Well, right on, man. Well, I feel like that's a good lesson and a common theme. I know that for myself, I've learned to live very frugally, to continue to do this for good. Mm-hmm. And I also remember having a sense that I needed to have my time available all the time if I wanted to be around when a session opportunity
Absolutely.
arrived. I just never felt like I could sign up for anything where I had to commit to a whole schedule.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever said no in my life.
It's one of those skills I'm trying to learn.
Yeah. You should always say yes. Even if, that's the 26-hour kind of thing. You should just say yes.
Just say yes.
Yep.
All right, let's jump to the next question. How about a recording tip, hack, or secret sauce, something our rock stars could use today in their next session?
Something that I found myself doing a lot is using the Ocean Way room sound. If I'm mixing something, I'll put it right before my two, and I'll sort of send everything to it. And I like the B room and the drum option, and then darkening all the mics, and just sort of, and all pre-fader, and just using it as a congealing factor, really quiet in the mix. But I've done that, and almost always when I take it out, I miss it, so it's just this nice little rubber. It almost feel like jelly or something sitting in there that just sits really nice.
Yeah, it's almost like dither.
Mm-hmm.
In the digital world. I have a plate reverb and same thing. Sometimes I find, if I use too much, it's too much. But if I use just a little bit everywhere, it does have a sense of gluing it all together and making it sound, more appealing to listen to.
Yeah, it just fits better with itself.
Yeah. All right. And so if somebody wanted to try that, what do they need for that?
You'll need the Ocean Way. I can give
Is this
you
an impulse response or something like that, or is it a plugin?
No, it's its own plugin. It's a UA plug. I can pull it up really quick so I can give you a proper name.
Well, we can add that in the show notes too, or you can pause right now if you want to pull it up.
No, it's all right.
Okay, so it's so we need the Universal Audio plugin
The
of
Ocean Way.
Yep. Room for reverb. Okay, cool. How about a hardware tool, something that you're kind of excited about having with you physically in the studio when you're making records?
Man, that 8-track Tascam is really exciting. I use it just for the pre's because the transport busted about a year and a half ago.
Oh, that's funny.
I hate it because the transport is going to cost about the same cost as just getting another one, and I don't feel like having 2 of these things laying around. But I'll use the 8-track for direct guitar, just if I want to crush a guitar. That's a really good way to do that. And you can't fake that kind of distortion. I haven't found a plugin or even another pedal that can do that. And I use that when I'm tracking drums. That's the hat mic pre.
Nice. So it gives the hat a little bit of crunch and sizzle.
It gives it all, and I roll all the high off, all the low off, and it's just this like, it's perfect. And you get the rest of that sound in the overheads in the rooms, you know?
That's a trip. Cool. Is this one that when the tape was working, the transport was working, you could actually punch in on and sort of compose a track that way, or did you have to play it from top to bottom?
It wasn't this exact same box, but it's the same model. That was the first piece of recording equipment I ever owned. My dad got it for me when I was 12 or something. We saw me writing a lot and sort of wanting to record a lot. I was fortunate enough to have him invest in one of these things.
Hey, do you ever use that or anything else like that where you'll record an idea to cassette, then rewind it and sort of play it into Pro Tools and then just line it up in place in a song for that sound?
There's a record I did with my brother Eric a couple years ago that still has only a little bit seen the light of day, but hasn't really had a proper release. Where another one of to go back to tape and what I miss about, because I've messed around with tape when I was a kid. It was laying around. I would always kind of mess with it. Is the VSO option. So that's one of the main reasons I would use that again if the transport was working, just to fly a stereo bouncy tune into that, record whatever you want to record, do your VSOing, send just that track back in and figure out how to line it up. And
you can create a texture that wouldn't exist otherwise.
Otherwise, you'd not be able to do it.
Yeah. It's like you're stretching your voice out like a rubber band.
Sure, yeah.
All right, so now how about software? Anything kind of exciting? I know you mentioned that for a recording tip. Anything else software-wise that you're kind of excited about?
What am I excited about? The API 2500 compressor, the new UA, is really great.
Use that as a 2-bus compressor usually?
Yeah, I do. Or going through the drums or something.
Do you find that still like the hardware unit, you might almost not want to see the needle move at all on compression, or do you let it dig in and really shave off a dB or 2?
It depends. It depends. If it's a really gentle song, then no, I don't really want to see it move. But it just depends. If you want it to hit really hard, let it hit. If you don't.
Right, okay. So no hard, fast rules about it.
No.
What about things like attack time and release time? Are there some good starting places when you're using that on a 2-bus?
Believe it or not, there is a Vance Pal setting in props to
Vance, you're back on the podcast.
Yeah. Hey man, it's Jordan. Great setting on there. And I bet you money he's listening to the radio going, I'm pretty sure that's the 2500 Vance Pal setting right there. That's on it. Depends. I have like 2 settings in there, and Vance is for the rock stuff. I'll just start there, and where I need to move it around, I will. But it's typically a pretty darn good starting place.
All right, cool. I'm going to have to check that out. I haven't heard it yet. All right, now how about a resource for the business side of this? If you want to, or if somebody wants to do this not just for a hobby, they'd like to make a living, what advice would you have for them? Or do you have a resource that they should know about online, something that would help them?
No resource, but I would just start making records for free. I would just find people you're interested in and that you think that you really understand, and get to know them, do it for free, make some agreement where if something happens, of course, compensation will come into play. But that's kind of how I got the ball moving down the field, is just doing stuff for free and trying to get your stuff heard. And that's a really good way to make mistakes and get better,
Sling some hash if you need to.
Sling some hash, whatever it takes.
Don't be afraid to get thin.
It's not about the process, it's about the product.
Yeah, it's about getting the right thing done in the end.
Absolutely.
When you were making free records, do you feel like you had a sense of setting the bar so that you were making a record with somebody that was going someplace with this record? Or did you not even get caught up in that? Did you just say, I'm just going to work on stuff that inspires me to just make the music?
That's pretty much it. It was just inspiring. It just made you want to do a better job than you thought you could do.
Living in Nashville, growing up in Nashville, do you feel like you've been surrounded constantly by a temptation of, oh, you should do this because this is what's supposed to be done, or this is the music business, you should work with these kinds of people making this kind of music?
No, and I would credit that to my dad and my brother Jason for also not really playing by those rules. And I'm just not that way anyway. You know, who was I talking to about it? I was talking to somebody recently where, you know, every once in a while you got to do something you don't want to do. That's just part of the deal. And you do it, and you grit and bear it, and you get it done and move on. If that's all I was doing, I would quit. I wouldn't do this if that's all I was doing. And it's just...
Go back to slinging hash.
Absolutely, man. You get cash at the end of the day, man. You don't have to wait 3 months.
All right. Now, how about an organizational resource for what you do? Anything, a tip you want to hit people to as far as keeping their stuff organized?
Well, it depends on what you're talking about. I mean, for production?
There's all sorts of things we have to organize these days. Sometimes it's tracks, sometimes it's
look
hard
around
drive
my room
things.
right now. There's stuff all over. There's scores and 20 books all over the place. My desktop is a mess.
I noticed you don't have a mixing console. You're using the Universal Audio Apollo interfaces and your speakers, and your screen is in the middle. Were you ever tempted by trying to have like a console in front of you?
Yeah, for summing, I would like to do that. But not, and if the pre's were all great, it made a lot of sense, I'd do it. But it's just the Apollos, it's too easy. It's too good to just pass it up.
Have you worked in both environments? One where you have a mixing console that's big and the speakers are sort of set back a little bit, versus one where it feels more like a desk and the speakers are up close to you?
The compound is sort of like that. My dad's studio is sort of where there's a big console and there's speakers way in the back. But that room is treated, and I've worked there for 10 or 15 years, so I know exactly what it's supposed to sound like.
What do you feel like is the difference for you experience-wise between working in a speaker setback environment versus, the desk with the monitors pretty close to you?
Just recalibration. When I first turned on these speakers, my eyes crossed because it was like, oh my God, this sounds totally insane. And eventually it started sounding normal. Now, if I played something and it stood in the back of the room, the bass would be ridiculously loud. Now, if I went out to the car, the bass is somewhere in the middle. It's louder than it is if I'm right in front of the speakers, but it's not as loud as it is if I was in the back of the room. It's just calibration. It's just learning your room. I would, one of the really big reasons I want to treat this room is, obviously I want it to translate to other studios. I want to be able to know what I'm listening to, but it's more for if somebody's sitting on that side of the room and somebody else is sitting on the other side of the room, that I know that they're getting the same image.
Yeah, you don't need conflicting feedback all day long.
Yeah. So, that's a big difference.
All right, cool. Well, so now we're going to go into the last two questions. They're both hypothetical. The first one is, imagine yourself having to start all over again. And you've kind of answered a lot of these questions already. But if you needed a simple setup to start recording, you needed to find people to record, and you needed to make ends meet so that you could actually survive doing it. I feel like you've already talked about the Apollo and you talked about making ends meet. What about finding people to record and making sure that you're connecting with inspiring music?
I would just go to shows. I'd make enough money working at a restaurant to where I could go buy 3 beers and maybe a 4th for the person that I might be interested in working with every night. And I'd do that every night until I found somebody that I wasn't interested in, but we were also interested in me.
Yeah.
And then I'd just do that.
And then get those chances to make a record for free.
That's right.
Simple setup to start with. What would you recommend to somebody who's just starting out?
The small twin is awesome.
That's the Apollo.
The Apollo twin. They're great. It's sort of all you really need. 57, you can't go wrong.
I don't have a twin, and I've seen them. They look wonderful. You have processing power in there so you can actually run the UA plugins.
Totally.
And just connect a USB cable to your laptop and you're up and running, right?
Totally. I mean, in this industry specifically, this is not like writing novels where all you really need is a piece of paper and a pencil. This is like, as soon as you decide you want to do this, you're at the tip of the iceberg. And even building this studio, as soon as I did this, it was like, I'm at the tip of the iceberg. There's a mountain of things I have to get now. So everybody needs to know that no matter where you start, you're at the tip of the iceberg.
Right. It's good advice. It's a good quote.
Yeah. Unless you're a writer, man, then you just got to, Tarantino. You just
need that acoustic guitar and the memo app.
Yeah, right. Yeah, those guys I completely envy. Those guys don't need anything, man. And they make a lot more money.
And they spend all their time out at the cabin.
That's right.
Just coming to town to deliver the new song.
Maybe we're doing the wrong thing, man. The Twin is great, and the 57 and a 414. Honestly, those three pieces of gear. 414 is a great mic. You can probably find a much cheaper condenser, but you can get a lot of mileage on those three pieces of gear.
Yeah, nice. We don't have to go too deep into the 414, but what's one of the qualities about it that you like?
It is pretty malleable. The roll-off is great. You can use it for...
You got a pad on it so you can stick it in front of loud stuff.
Totally. I mean, there's just, it's very malleable. It sounds great on acoustic, sounds great on vocal, sounds good as a room mic, There's just a lot of stuff you can do.
I've experienced in the past that it has a dark quality to it, which might be the wrong way to say it, but where the high end doesn't get too aggressive. I've also experienced having a singer on it, a female voice, where it seems to smoothly absorb, the upper edge that might be in a voice and the sibilance.
That makes a lot of sense. I always prefer darker mics to brighter mics, just because I still haven't found a great plugin that rolls top off in the right kind of way. Like, Decapitator kind of does it where you can take off some of the top, but what does work is the Studer 800. It has that little...
It's got an EQ curve to it.
Yeah, and I usually use it to add some top, where I use it in my 2-mix a lot, and I'll start by making things kind of dark, and then I'll use that to sort of brighten everything up together. But it's really nice to roll off some of the top, but it just takes a lot of CPU power.
Yeah, right. All right, cool. Last question is, we're going to take the studio Wayback Machine. You can go back and find young Jordan, tap yourself on the shoulder, you turn around and say, older Jordan, what are you doing here? And you say, well, I've come back to give you this one bit of advice. Here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day.
Shit, hold on.
Good luck with that. By the way, I've had a lot of practice with that delivery, but you're first up here with the answer.
All right. This sounds awful, but I don't think I would have done anything differently. I would have said, just keep, chin up, head down is what I've been saying lately. Just keep going. Don't look down. Keep going.
Chin up, head down.
Yeah, keep your chin up, keep your head down.
That sounds like that would hurt. Wouldn't that pinch your nose a lot?
Yeah, it kind of does that.
All right, cool, man. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Recording Studio Rockstars. We're 3 down of the Lehning family. I don't know how much further we have to go, but I know that I mentioned this before. I had the opportunity to photograph your grandfather, your dad, and Jason all standing in the doorway. And I don't remember if Jason's son was there at my studio one day. I thought it was pretty cool getting 3 generations of the Lehning.
That's awesome.
Right there.
That's great.
So great hanging with you.
Likewise,
it's a wonderful new studio.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the stories and all the advice. I think is awesome.
Awesome. Thank you, man.
We'll see you around the studio, dude.
Sounds good.
Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, please leave a rating and review on iTunes to help reach more people. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to recordingstudiorockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And if you want more free content, all you have to do is text RS Rockstars to 33444. Again, that's RS Rockstars to 33444, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, and podcast updates. And I'll let you know about any upcoming giveaway offers, all totally free. Thanks for listening. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music.